You know, this issue has been described as having been motivated by what's been identified as a specific group of, quote, aggressive panhandlers. And that description has given an impression that we have a contingent of folks who are different from the average with whom we deal and visit on a regular basis, that they're more aggressive, and they even are transient. They come and go. I'm curious if you two see that way as well.
Yeah, we've seen a difference in the population. A lot of the folks that you see on the corners with the signs are not people that we see normally.
Okay.
These are people that we're not familiar with at all at the Haven.
Okay.
And I'd have to support that. I mean, I've had, and I appreciate again the opportunity for being on here today, but certainly your audience needs to distinguish that we're talking about aggressive panhandling. So, you know, when Elaine used the analogy of somebody standing on the corner, that's viewed as passive panhandling, and so we're talking about the type of individual that unfortunately approaches a person in a parking lot, near an ATM, near a business entrance, and is getting into that person's, I guess I would say, personal space. And the individual is feeling threatened. I myself have had that occurrence at the post office last winter when it was 9 o'clock at night, and an individual pops around the corner, and he approaches me, and I'm the only one there.
Right.
You know, I'm just there to get stamps, and just to digress a moment, I'm very accustomed, like Elaine, to dealing to supporting and giving support and infrastructure to the at-need and at-risk and homeless population. But, I didn't recognize this individual like Elaine doesn't recognize these individuals. And he hopped the train. He came off the train because our train is very slow moving through Battle Creek, and approached me from the backside, of the post office, and yelled out at me and wanted money, and even identified that he was a veteran, but I know it was a bogus veteran ID. But he got into my personal space, and I myself and others, have felt, threatened or uncomfortable with the situation. So that to me was aggressive panhandling. What I did was I gave him my business card, because the Share Center is less than 1 block from where he was at, and said, come back the following morning and we'll help you out.
Right.
Or go to the Haven tonight to seek shelter. Did he come back the following morning? No.
Yeah.
So,
and you said he came off the train. The Amtrak?
not the Amtrak.
Okay.
It's the freight train.
Got it.
Which goes through our community at a very slow rate,
I
because
see.
sometimes it's carrying chemicals, unfortunately, that, it has to go through very slowly.
Yeah.
So there's many different venues or opportunities for individuals to come into our community, whether it's the bus system, the freight train system, or hitchhiking off the I-94 corridor. But these are not, we want to make the distinction that in general, the homeless population or the underserved population are well informed of our community resources and the infrastructure of our nonprofit agencies, that there is absolutely no reason an individual should go hungry in this community. We serve a nutritious meal, 365 days a year. The Share Center itself served over 18,500 meals, and we're open 365 days, 12 hours a day. So even if we're not serving, we have a pantry. And Elaine in the Haven does the same thing.
Right.
But there's such a vast infrastructure within our community, within the church and nonprofit sector. When a person holds up a sign, and that's passive panhandling, that I'm a vet, which I question truly if they are a vet, because it's against the law to misrepresent yourself. But if they're homeless and hungry, they're not going into the resources correctly. They're not tapping into. Begging is a business, and we need to make the distinction of that.
And we'll talk more about that in just a second. We'll also make a distinction, too, which maybe I should have started with, between the Haven and the Share Center, so we're clear about what your roles are in the community. In just a minute, we'll talk about that coming up on WBCK. WBCK, Elaine Hunsicker with the Haven is here, and Doug Stewart with the Share Center. Let's, before we go further, make a distinction between the services that you offer. So the Haven does what?
We do emergency shelter, meals, 3 meals a day, which equates to 80,000 meals a year. We do case management, life skills classes, community resources for referrals. We have substance abuse treatment programs, both residential and intensive outpatient for men and women. We have the licensed daycare, veterans transitional housing program, and some permanent supportive housing.
And a shelter when folks need it.
And the Calhoun County Jail Ministry.
Right. Now, Share Center, Doug.
Share Center, we provide, we're mostly known probably to the community, but we serve all of Calhoun County. We are licensed as the day shelter. So Elaine just brought up a portion of her organizational's business structure. So we also have the day shelter, which I alluded to just briefly before the segment ended. But we are open 365 days, 12 hours a day. And in the winter, we'll stay open to 14 hours a day. So within that drop-in self-help center, it's a peer-run organization, meaning it's individuals who have had a life experience, who have been homeless, who have had an addictive disorder or have had a behavioral health disorder, and we train, mentor, and employ those individuals to help be peer support or navigators and supporting the needs of the individual. So again, I reference we see about 4,500 unique, that's not duplicated, but unique individuals each year coming through our center. So in the center, we do have what's called a community inclusion and street outreach program, where like Elaine, we receive funding to go out into the community and assess the needs and educate individuals who are at risk on the multitude of different factors. And we will go into, the camps or different locations to make sure that they are aware of what's available in the community. We also have a meal site program, as Elaine had mentioned. And I mentioned briefly, we serve not as much as Elaine, but we're the second largest meal provider, within the community. And we have a pantry. And then we have what's called, supportive services, where we offer free laundry service. So an individual doesn't really have a reason not to have clean clothes. We provide resources for a person who may have been robbed, which is very frequent in the underserved homeless population, to get their identity back. So that's one of our other aspects, because without your identity, you can't get a job. Then we also have what's called a recovery coach program. Again, it's related to those individuals who have a substance use disorder and are learning to integrate back into their life through a person who had previously a substance abuse disorder. So they're a peer-to-peer relationship. And then we have a return to work program, which we help people mentor job skills, life skills coaching. And then we have the Recovery House, which is a substance use disorder recovery house that we're compensated for individuals to stay 30 to 90 days. And it's a transitional, very structured living environment. So we offer 5 different programs similar to what Elaine and the Haven do in terms of great work providing infrastructure support to the at-risk and homeless population.
I presume then that there are some folks who might stay at the Haven overnight, avail themselves of the services you have, and then go to the Share Center during the day.
Correctly.
Yeah, we share a lot of clients in common. Because it takes a lot of times more than just one agency to get someone up on their feet and get them back into society again as a productive citizen.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they just need to believe in themselves. And it takes more than just my opinion, to do that. It takes a lot of people telling them over and over again, you can do this, we'll help you. And then being patient and helping them along that way. And one thing I wanted to make, point I would like to make on these
Sure.
panhandlers is that traditionally the stereotypes are not always accurate. We have people who panhandle for the wrong reasons. They want to buy drugs or whatever.
Very true.
We also have some adult foster care residents, and they'll panhandle to buy things like a lottery ticket or popping potato chips and things like that. And they look scary, but they're not. They're just a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't, in their right mind, don't want to be a panhandler when they grow up. It's like being homeless. Nobody says, oh, I want to be a homeless person when I grow up.
Right.
Well, I don't want to be a panhandler either when I grow up. People just don't realize that these are folks with issues. And some of it is substance abuse. Some of it is mental illness. Some of it is just a lifestyle that has evolved through their life situations.
We'll talk more about that when we come back, because you've made a distinction now about the community which your organizations are both serving, and then it seems we have the aggressiveness and the transient panhandlers that are sort of mucking up the system here. In my view, that's the way I'm seeing it after having had a few conversations on this issue. We'll talk about that more in just a minute on WBCK. WBCK, we're here talking with Elaine Hunsicker from The Haven and Doug Stewart with the Share Center. A few more minutes in our conversation. So what's motivated us today to talk about this is this aggressive panhandling debate that's going on in the city, and the notion that there may be some more teeth added to the law to try and deal with aggressive panhandling, which, if I've understood you, is different than from the communities with which you deal in your organizations a greater amount of the time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people are afraid of panhandlers, and understandably so. They're people you don't know coming up to you and asking you for money. You should be cautious, but we have to realize that as long as people continue to give them money, they will continue to approach people.
Mm-hmm.
They'll continue to ask. So if you don't want to be panhandled, don't give them money. And don't let your friends either. I mean, caution them. We have had very little actual harm happen from panhandlers.
Well,
Normally they're not dangerous people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different. And you don't ostracize someone or punish them for being different. But we do have some folks who have pushed the envelope too far.
Right.
You do have the right to go into a restaurant and eat your meal without being solicited. You have the right to have a business and not be concerned that somebody's going to stand outside your business and solicit and keep customers from coming in. On the other hand, I have the right as an individual, as a citizen, that I can choose to give these people money or not. If they're standing on a street corner and not bothering anyone, or just standing on the sidewalk and they ask me, hey, have you got a couple of dollars or a pocket full of change? I have the right to just say, no, I don't, and keep going. I don't have to give them money.
Mm-hmm. It's just the approach tends to make one ill at ease, and then your point is well taken, that the more we give, then the more we support that behavior, and then the root cause doesn't get addressed. So is it your view then that greater teeth is needed in the law as it is being suggested to try and deal with this aggressive panhandling issue?
I would say that, Elaine and I and others and the city commissioners, we actually had a city commissioner come down and do a forum at the day shelter, the drop-in center yesterday, and other communities have tried to address, and it's even gone to the Michigan state federal ruling where Attorney General Schuette back in 2013 in Grand Rapids, it was shot down. Michigan was going to try to develop some structure around aggressive panhandling, and everyone has, as Elaine alluded to, their First Amendment rights, and even the 14th Amendment bridges over into this area. But as Elaine mentioned, we keep feeding the continuation of the scenario, of the situation, by giving to the individual, and especially if it's money, because you don't know where that money's going to be used. So when we have interns through Western Michigan University or Davenport College or Kellogg Community College come in and say, how should I support, or how should I address a person that is soliciting or begging to me? And, I say one thing is don't give them money, because you might be feeding into their addiction and you're enabling them. Mm-hmm. And I educate them. And here today we're trying to educate the community that a person holding up a homeless and hungry sign in this community has plenty of infrastructure. And again, I'll go back to begging as a business. I commend the individual that goes and collects pop cans for 10 cents on their bike, but it's a very lucrative business, and those individuals that we observe at different locations of the community who even do static or passive panhandling go to their very nice car parked in a parking lot and drive back to a hotel room or their home. They're not underserved. They're supplementing their income.
So a law then that had greater teeth to allow, say, Battle Creek Police to intervene and move along someone who's been making someone ill at ease and aggressively panhandling them would not interfere with the missions of your organizations. Am I understanding that correctly?
It would not interfere with what we do at the Haven. The argument is, do you have the right to stand there on the sidewalk or beside a door and ask people for money? That's a tough question. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I have as a business owner, I would be very upset with that, and I totally understand that.
Yes.
As a private individual, as a private citizen, if I want to stand on the street corner and sermonize or state my political views or whatnot, I have the right to do that. I don't know how you would draw the line at the difference.
Yeah, I guess that's for the lawyers to figure out.
Yeah.
By all means.
Well, we appreciate the time you've given us and the perspective you've given us both. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Elaine Hunsicker here from the Haven and Doug Stewart from the Share Center.